Hey, just came home like an hour ago from shooting that product photography vlog that I did last time. We released the episode before this episode, so go check it out if you haven't seen it. But now I'm heading out to do some portrait photography and tell you some tips on how to get good pictures in natural sunlight outside. Now I got a friend who said that she wanted to model for me. Well, actually she didn't say that she wanted to model for me. I just told her that I'm gonna do a vlog about portrait photography and I need a model, and I suggested to her that she would come and be my model, and she was okay with it. So we're gonna go shoot out and do some portraits with her. So, by the way, I'm on fire. I mean, 2 vlogs in one day, back-to-back vlogging. What is this? Man, those brakes make a really nasty sound. This is a really shadowy place, but we're gonna use that for our benefit. Now on the way here there was this birch forest that I really wish we're gonna get back to, because those photos from there are gonna be so dope. This is the end of the trail. It is a bird watching tower. You can watch birds and, well, the city and stuff onto the lake. Better get back to my bike so I can find my friend. Now with lenses, what to use? I mainly use the 85mm 1.8 and the 35mm 1.8. Those are perfect portrait lenses to begin with if you haven't done any kind of portrait photography before. This is a matter of opinion. You can use whatever you want, but with aperture, I highly suggest a lower aperture like 2.8, maximum of 3. That's what I love to use because it highlights the subject, blurs out the background, gives depth to the photo and so on. But we're still waiting for my friend. She should be rolling down that hill, let's say in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. And then we're gonna start shooting. Man, I came here too soon. That wasn't a mosquito, but the mosquitoes that are here are pretty much on steroids. Jesus Christ. Aren't you a lovely looking tree? How you been? How you doing? I have no idea why I'm talking to trees. She's here at last, guys. That's Jansku. Say hi. Now when taking photos in the shadows, you gotta look where the light is bouncing from, and just half of the face is enough to light the face. And when you're taking harsh sunlight, you can actually use the sunlight as a backlight and make it a softer and not that contrasty of an image. So it's perfect for that. It's really perfect for that. You just gotta remember that when you're taking in harsh sunlight, all the skin details come out, so remember to edit those in post-edit. When taking photos in the shadows, remember that the background is really important. If the background is all lit up in the sunlight, the contrast and everything, it just goes way out of balance. It's unbalanced, the picture is unbalanced. But when you take it in the shadows and the background is in the shadows, it actually looks like a good image. But the other way around, it works perfectly. So when the subject is in the light and there's shadows around her or him, it works perfectly. It highlights the subject. It's just beautiful. So we're gonna go head on and I'm gonna show you more pictures. Lasit voi olla siellä. Okay, so here's a good example of how to use shadows and highlight, because you can put the subject between the shadows and, well, the highlights do the rest. And you can also use the sun as a backlight in these kinds of photos too, because it looks cool, it softens out the subject. I just love harsh sun backlight. of course, the last shoot of the day is sunset photography. Now what I like to do is set the white balance to shadow, so it gives a little bit of that warm depth to the pictures, and yeah, that's about it. I also picked these up from over there, because if I didn't pick these up, I'd have to stand in the water to take the pictures. So these are gonna give some depth to the photos and look like there's something in front of her and she's at the beach and stuff like that. So now when taking portraits, you always got to remember that this here, the face, is the most important part. So keep that in mind, the face focused, and look at the shadows, everything. Sometimes it's good to look straight at the sun, but it's gonna look really harsh, so leave some shadows. But yet again, if you give too much shadows, the nose shadow, for example, can just be too long and look distracting on the face. So be careful, just look at different kind of angles where you're gonna take the shots, and you'll be just fine. Just try out stuff, be artistic. That's what I love to say, be artistic. Now, as you can see here, I picked up 8 photos that I, well, yet again, found that were the best. So first of all, I'm gonna start with this number 2, that is a picture of her face holding that hat against her face, just showing her eyes. And why I want to start with this is because this is sort of like the starting photo, and after that I can paste the settings onto other photos and see how they turn out. So first of all, with the curves, like the product photos, let's start with the J curve, and I'm gonna do a J curve right here. Then straight forward to the reds, greens and blues. First off, the red, and on these pictures I am gonna do a really steep color curve this time. And what I'm going for is this vintage sort of look with these photos. Then the greens, same here, really steep curve. And there you go. Okay, that's for the tone curves. You can see that it is really contrasty, so I just have to do some basic corrections to correct that. And I'm gonna start, well, adding some contrast, because I know they're gonna go away later on. Sometimes I actually, even at this point, might tweak the exposure, but not yet, because I'm not sure how it's gonna look like. So highlights down, because I want the hat to pop a little bit. Shadows up, because I don't want the background being all that black. Let's see, just so that it starts showing. Whites down, good. Blacks up, good. And a little bit of clarity, yeah. Then I am not gonna add any vibrance, but it is a little bit saturated, so I'm gonna just put down the saturation a little bit. That's good. Usually at this point, when I'm doing portrait photos, I go into the calibration section and I straightforward check out what it would look like if I started playing with them. The reds, maybe the greens, like that, and then the blues, not so much. That's looking actually pretty nice, pretty vintage looking. And something's missing here. Okay, and something a little bit extra here. So you can see actually that the hair is having these yellow spots over here. She had like this natural kind of yellow over here if I put them side by side, but I really like how it's sort of like silvery, the hair, so I want to get rid of that yellow. So all I usually do at this point is I take a brush, I gently brush the yellow parts that I see that are distracting me. Yeah, a little bit over here, like that, and all I do is pump down the saturation until I'm happy. And that looks actually pretty fine. It isn't that bad anymore. So then I check out the eyes, the eyes are looking pretty nice, and I am just gonna add some brushing to them and make them pop out a little bit more. I usually want the eyes to have some soul, so all you have to do is brush them, add a little bit of exposure and some highlights, and there you go. It's like God looking straight into your soul. So we added some clarity, and of course we shot these in harsh sunlight, so we want to make the skin look a little bit better. Usually the harsh sunlight makes it a little bit rough. It shows a lot of those rough details that people have in their skin. Yansku is a beautiful woman and has beautiful skin, but sun, that just does it to everybody. So there, and all we have to do is pump down the clarity. So this is what happens when I pump down the clarity all the way. It makes it like it looks almost artificial, so you don't want to go that down. You want to just get rid of those harsh looking spots, and like, you know, skin has harsh kind of spots and stuff, so you want to get rid of those, but not so much that it looks artificial. And there you go. Then to the post cropping, maybe some vignetting. That is looking nice, just not that much, but just a little bit. And of course we have a vintage photo, or we're doing a vintage photo, so you're gonna want some grain. Even though you don't really like grain, you're always gonna want some grain. Before, after, I think that is just my style. That is just what I've been looking for. And like before, let's just close that up. I'm gonna at least synchronize this with the first photo that is taken from the same place. See how it looks like. It's looking pretty dope. It's really in the shadows, so I just want to correct it a little bit. Let's pump up the highlights, maybe pump up, yeah, that's good. And it is quite saturated, so maybe just a little bit less saturation, maybe a little bit of warmth. And yet again, then check the eyes. Put some soul into those eyes. Well, she does have soul, so that's not a problem, but come on, load it. Good, and the second one good, and then add some highlights and a little bit of exposure, and good. So as you can see, we've been shooting in the shadow, so it's diffused light, so we can actually turn down the sharpening too, so we don't have that much roughness. Maybe turn down the grain. Don't have that much roughness on the skin. So then the photos that we took at the birch forest. First of all, her standing here with a big smile on her face, like she's enjoying everything that I'm telling her to do. Then there's a photo of her picking some grass or something. Then there's the picture of her looking over her shoulder and looking at the camera. So we can actually just try it out. First of all, straightforward, what would it look like if we synchronized? Pretty vintage, pretty dark. So we're gonna have to make a lot of changes here. First of all, the exposure, and actually that's enough. I like that a lot. We can actually, if you want to, you can select the subject. Let's see what kind of job it does this time. You can actually just pump up the shadows maybe a little bit, maybe give her some exposure. That's it. This is a good example that I didn't check out my surroundings, and I could have told her not to put the hat on because, well, the hat is giving a lot of shadows to her face. So in a sense, this photo is a failure. It looks good, it looks kind of cool, it looks good, but in my opinion, it is a failure. And yet again, we're gonna synchronize one of the photos with that photo. And there you go. Maybe I would just push up the highlights a little bit because I'm loving how they bloom from behind the trees. Whoa, that was exposure. This right here. And maybe put down the shadows a little bit. And maybe put in some warmth, and that's it. Looking pretty vintage and nice. Now these photos were my favorite photos. These photos right here are from the sunset. They by themselves do a lot. Now this is what you see when you change your white balance to shadow mode. So it makes the yellows bloom, it makes the sunset bloom a little bit, in my opinion. And I can make this kind of, well, I'm calling her at these photos Los Angeles girl, so I can make her look like a Los Angeles girl. And I don't really want to edit these too much. I could, well, we can look what it's gonna look like. We can see what it's gonna look like if we put in the preset, we synchronize it with the things we've done. So it's gonna look pretty yellowish. I'm gonna have to turn down the temperature a little bit. And she's pretty much in the dark right now. So that's a bummer. And if I can't really put up the shadow, so I'm gonna have to select the subject. And we have selected the subject and pump up the shadows to make her appear a little bit more from those shadows. And actually that is looking pretty nice. Maybe let's see what the highlights does. Well, not that much highlights, but let's see what the exposure does. Now it's looking artificial, so yeah, that's what the preset does. Now if I would change something to this photo, it's the sunglasses. I want them to pop. I want them to show a little bit of the reflection that they're showing. So I mask them out like this. Then I put the contrast to 0. Then I put, let's see what the highlights does. Maybe the shadows down. Shadows up, actually. Maybe put the whites down. And you can actually put the blacks down a little bit because you're gonna pump up the shadows, so. And let's see what exposure does. Let's put in some clarity there and back, and let's put them side by side. Nice. It is nice. It's not as nice as I wish it would be because, like I said, I like the natural look on the pictures. So let's go on to the next one. There is only minor changes that I would do here. I would pump up the contrast. I would take down the temperature a little bit. I would set in some clarity, put in some dehaze. Let's see, not that much vibrance, saturation a little bit, maybe even after that you can actually add in some temperature. It's good. Then I'm gonna select the subject. Now some sharpness in there. Usually when you put pictures into Instagram, 30 points is enough. I think that is my opinion. And then put down the temperature a little bit. I don't want her
to seem yellowish, too yellowish. That's it. Before and after. Subtle changes, and that's a cool chick right there. Then the last photo is just another face photo. Maybe add some contrast to it to deepen the shadows and turn the temperature a little bit to the... No, I wouldn't do that actually. I wouldn't actually even touch really anything about it. I just pump up the highlights a little bit, turn down the shadows a little bit, turn down the whites, pump down the blacks, because I'm loving how it's like shadows and highlights. So that's all. That's actually looking pretty dope. And remember to straighten them out. So let's just take the angle tool over here and always check that the horizon is is straight, because it's gonna distort the image. And if you like the video, remember to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell icon. Signing out these videos is usually the hardest part, because I'm sick and tired of just putting my hand there, flipping my cap. I'm just gonna walk away. Oh, my back.